The manga starts, and we see a big school building standing tall in the middle of a sunny, bright weather. From the side, a scraping sound was coming, and as the students themselves became wary of a person, our main protagonist was busy doing something weird. Taku had a troubled expression over his face, and it seemed like he fit the perfect picture of a suspicious person, but he was not doing anything wrong other than cleaning the sidewalk on the building. Taku is a clean freak, and as he carefully scraped the old gum off the floor, from the side an old man greets him, and as he greets him back, he asks Taku if he has any special reason to do chores around the school. He plays around with that piece of gum, and with a big wide smile he lets that old man know that he has no hidden reason for doing this, and he genuinely finds this appealing to himself. As the old man leaves him, Taku just fires up his arm and was ready to use the hidden shadow technique to perfectly scrape off the old chewed gum. As he was too busy in this, from the side someone kicks him hard and sends him off spinning. He ends up bumping into a flower pot, and it unexpectedly spills some of its soil. As he cries, the person who kicked it apologizes, and there we meet the lovely idol of the school, Mika, and also the childhood friend of Taku. She had a mischievous smile on her face, and as he confronts her about the misdeed she did, Mika, on the other hand, completely ignores poor Taku and begins to share about her experiences and how she sneaked out of her regular practice session. Now, since his nagging was too much, she adjusts everything in that pot and fixes it, but he complains again about the poor structure of the pot. As he started to add how he likes doing this and helping others is helpful to him, she reminds him that if he keeps on working for others, in the end, he would end up being a maid for them. Now these two had a rather comfortable chemistry around them, and as he leans over to her, with a confident voice he lets her know that he has something very important he wants to tell her. Now as she hears this, for a minute she had a blank and somewhat hidden face, and in a cold voice she asks him what topic he wants to talk on. With a stuttering voice he lets her know that he would tell her everything tomorrow, and as he explains her the address, it seems like Mika somewhat knew that he was perhaps going to confess or something. She tells him that tomorrow he would just end up making an excuse, and as she calls him a coward, she leaves him and tells him that soon she would meet someone better than him. As she leaves, it seemed like someone called out to her, and as Taku realizes this, he knew that someone was going to meet Mika right now. He runs over to her, and as he sneaks and watches everything, sure enough, a tall man was standing near Mika, and he was about to say the magic words. The captain of the school's football team is a charming boy that a lot of girls are after, and today he invited Mika for something special. As she blushed a little, it seemed like she liked his face. And strangely, she blows him off and leaves him hanging there all heartbroken. Mika rejected him harder than ever, and as he bends over a little, Taku was very glad to see that his childhood friend and crush rejected another person today. He was pleased but also scared, since if he confesses to her, he could get rejected as well. There were doubts in him that kept eating him from the inside, but he knew that he can't wait anymore, and soon she could be taken by someone else. That night something very strange was about to take place, and as he finds a slightly dirty vase, he began to wipe it over and over again. He also ended up seeing a romantic movie in which two couples were about to kiss, and seeing this, he started to write his script for tomorrow. Now being a clean freak, he began to clean the window, and there he sees a man pushing himself on a helpless woman. As they were talking loudly, it seems like they are arguing, but as he looked closer, that man was aggressively handling that woman and grabbing her wrist. He ignored whatever he saw and moved downstairs, and as a peaceful citizen, he wanted no part in their lovers' quarrel or whatever. But as he froze for a minute, he kept hearing a TV character exclaim about her ideal man. These words were enough to create a serious change in his mind, and Taku ends up doing the last thing he should have done. Outside, the man was seriously threatening that woman, and from his back, he mutters to him in a weak voice and tells that man that maybe he needs to calm down and let that poor lady go. He kept raising his arms and approached him in a mannerly way, but that man was sweating too heavily. He started to mutter to Taku that he must not come closer to him, and as he misunderstood his words, Taku kept approaching him, and he ends up shouting at him. He exclaims and tells Taku that he needs to mind his own business and leave them. He explains to him that if he gets near him, he could get infected by the virus. Now Taku immediately knew that he should retreat, but as he moved back, that man gave him no choice, and in the next second, he dashes over to Taku and tells him that he has no control over himself and cries to him to run away right now. As we get the gut-wrenching sight of that man, he was bleeding from his eyes, and he cried to him that now Taku would get infected by his overflowing emotions. This was the last thing that Taku sees, and the next day he wakes up in his bed, and as he slowly tries to remember how he got back here in the first place. He had no idea how he was already in the bed, but his head was hurting. As he headed out for school, in front of him, a lady asks for his well-being. She explains that yesterday there was a rather wide commotion that even got police involved, and that lady asks Taku if he is holding up well. Now Taku had no idea what she was saying, and there was a large part of his memory that he couldn't remember no matter how much he tries. As he walked to school, from the back someone scares him, and Mika pushes the living crap out of him. As he jolts, he ends his analysis and confirms that everything is normal, and nothing around him changed whatsoever. Beautiful Mika greets him with a hopeful smile, and as she began to nag him, he was glad that nothing happened, but in the next second, he imagined his umbrella getting stabbed in Mika's throat so painfully that it passes through her neck with ease. Mika ends up getting a few inches wide hole in her neck. He imagines this in broad daylight. And strangely, his hands were already mimicking the action of a stab. As Mika notices his hand, she had thought that maybe he was about to fix her hair, and he asks if she felt anything strange on her neck. She refuses, but something sinister was dwelling in his mind. In the class, the popular captain of the football team was sulking pretty hard, and it seemed like he was rejected and didn't move on properly. All the students around him were seriously worried about him, and as Taku made his way near him, he immediately grabs Taku's collar and pushes him near the wall. He tells Taku that because he is a little close to Mika, he should stay in his limits. As he throws his hands away, suddenly Taku began to tremble. Everyone comforted him that it is not a very serious thing, and surely that captain is just in a bad mood, but that day during the classes, Taku was clearly not holding on. His heart rate was so high that he could hear it perfectly, and he kept controlling himself from doing something. He began to write something on his desk, and he was doing this over and over again, and the teacher calls out to him. He was so busy in this that he notices his teacher calling for him after some time, and as the teacher asked for his well-being, he apologizes, and the teacher knew that he was sick or something. Everyone in the class also wondered if the clean freak of their class is sick, but Taku replies to his teacher and tells him that he is fine and only wants to clean something. The whole class burst into laughter, and as he was given permission to leave the class, he went back to his secret hideout, and he began to scrape. This time he was barely holding on to the thin thread of sanity, and Taku wanted to kill Mika, his childhood friend, in the most brutal way ever. His intent to do this was so strong that he couldn't even think properly of anything else. These emotions were so strong that he explains that it is even more powerful than natural emotions and feelings like sleeping, hunger, or using the toilet. Just a few hours ago, he almost satisfied his thirst to kill her. He thinks about delaying his confession once again, but he questioned if that would just end everything for him. As he panted, he was sure that these bursts of emotion were temporary, and today will be the day where he would confess his feelings for her. The time for his confession came, and the captain ends up seeing Mika leaving all alone, and as the sidekick from before fuels the fire inside that captain, he ends up falling for the rage bait. Over at the old school building, Mika waited for her stupid childhood friend, but as she waited, she knew that he was not going to come. From the side, someone asks her who is she dating. Shinomiya asks her in an angry voice, and he was there to see the man that she chose over him. She tells him that whoever she sleeps with is entirely her business, and he should walk back. He dashes towards her and grabs her collar and slams her near the fence. He leans over near her mouth and shouts at her for rejecting a man like him and choosing someone else. He kept shouting at her, and from the back, Taku walks near there with wobbling steps. He tells him that he has something to tell his childhood friend. From one look at Taku's face, it was clear that something was seriously wrong with him, and he places his hand over Mika's shoulder, and as he shook, he reminds himself that today is the day where he would finally tell her everything. Today was the day where he would not let his childhood friend be stolen by someone else. As he kept shaking, Mika was also waiting for him to say the words, and just as he musters the courage, in the next second, with a dead and cold voice, he tells Mika that he wants to murder and butcher her. The delivery of his words was so cruel and heartless that Mika herself just processed this, and he begins to stutter, and immediately he tells her that he wanted to say something else. Now the annoying fly around them started to act up, and he grabs onto Taku's shoulder, but in return, Taku grabs his wrist, and in the next second, he flips Shinomiya so hard that he completely elevates in air for a fraction of a second, and he throws him over to the fence with so much brute force that the metal fence caves inward from the slam. With hateful eyes, he tells him to shut up. Taku grabs Mika by her throat, and this time he pushes her down, and he begins to apply pressure. She ends up crying from below, but Taku had no control over his own body. Poor Mika lets Taku know that she is sorry for everything, and as thick tears form in her eyes, he was applying so much force that she was begging for every bit of air that she could get. As she apologized, he himself didn't know what type of person he became overnight, and he ends up imagining another sight. And this time Taku was on top of Mika, and he was using different painful-looking instruments to do terrible things on her. As terror surrounded his eyes, he screams from seeing Mika laying on the roof with dozens of opened instruments lodged inside her, and blood covering everything. He shouts, and there was something seriously wrong with his head. He begged himself to stop imagining Mika in the most inhumane things, and as she herself begs him to calm down, Shinomiya from the side grunts from the excruciating pain, and he grabs an iron bar from the side and launches himself towards him. He was ready to strike Taku's head, and as he calls him a low-life janitor, Taku was also frustrated, and he rushes over to him as well, and he clenches his fist. Mika cries to him, and as she dashes to stop him, she pushes his fist down, and Taku ends up punching the ground. The sheer power he did this with was so great that the old school building's roof completely shattered into 100-ton concrete blocks. The loud impact from the concrete falling was so great that over on the other side of the school, everyone heard the impact loud and clear. Students rushed to see what had happened, and as they noticed the roof and the classroom below it completely in ruins, Taku was struggling just to crawl near his love, and as he falls unconscious, Taku cried out that there was something that he wanted to say to her before dying. As he falls, that day a tragedy took place which would shape the world entirely differently, and that day Taku and Mika should have died. As the smoke slowly moved away, Mika opens her eyes, and her story with Taku was just about to start. After 3 days, the news of the old school building was viral, and everyone in the school was talking about it. As two girls gossiped about views and other theories, Taku returned to school, and this time, all his liveliness from his eyes just disappeared, and an empty and hollow man remained. After Taku punched the building, it was then ordered to be crushed to prevent any other accident, and everything else was just the same. Taku cleans his school as usual, and as students greeted him, he would just ignore them. Luckily, this accident didn't have any casualties, but there were still other problems. As we see Shinomiya playing with toys, he enjoys every minute of it. After the crash, he was unable to move at all, and after he became somewhat normal, his brain completely regressed to that of an infant. He also suffered from memory loss. As the classmate reflected on how he should have at least rested for a few weeks, Mika, on the other hand, was stopped by 2 guys, and they asked for her well-being. As she waves to them, Taku from the back slowly makes his way near her, and as their eyes met, he made a troublesome expression, and he completely ignores her. He guiltily walks away, leaving her all stunned, and Taku is still blaming himself for the accident. 3 days have passed, and he hasn't been able to communicate with her. Taku began to clean his surroundings, and as the teacher notices this, he praises his tendency to work hard and keep the surroundings clean. Koki, a teacher, describes how small things describe a person's nature, and as Taku gave a rather depressing answer, he brushes his head and lets him know that Taku must stand firm and face his problems. He also advises him to share his pain and burden with someone else. As the beloved teacher of the entire school goes to greet a few students, he reflects on how he is the most popular teacher. He smiles to remember that he is always there to help him, and after the teacher sends his students away, he ends up meeting another man, and he requests some of his time. In class, there were all sorts of theories going on about the sudden collapse of the building, and one of the students adds how Shinomiya, Mika, and Taku were the only 3 students present there. As they started to talk through this, one of the guys from the group points out an important detail and pins his finger at Mika, who is again surrounded by boys, and he explains that a lot of boys are using this chance to get closer to Mika, and as they joke around saying that someone would snatch her away, they all point their fingers at Taku. Everyone in his class calls him janitor, and as the cocky dude points out to him, he was already so lost in his own thoughts that he didn't even know that someone was calling out to him. But the other man uses this chance, and he begins to hit him, and he confronts Taku for sinking into his own tiny world. Now, since he was just playing around with him, Taku was already infected with something devilish. In the next instant, he completely switches, and as the other boy leans over him, Taku blocks his hand, and there was something sinister approaching him. The students around them notice Taku as well, and as the active boy sees the terrifying sight in front of him, all his life leaves his body as Taku glares through his soul with his sharp and dreadful eyes. He reflects to himself that since he met that aggressive man, he gets predictions of brutal death that his bloodlust would create. As the cocky boy was in his imagination, this time he was in an undescribably horrifying position, and the teacher was explaining to them about his position. As Taku's bloodlust and killing intent leaks out, the poor soul ends up screaming so loud that everyone around him panics, and in the next second he throws up. As the students check up on him, Taku was already out of control. In the nurse's office, the condition of that active guy ended up becoming pretty serious. Now, after the report, that dude kept repeating to his family that he has a gaping hole in his stomach, and the doctor declared this to be intense stress. As they question how this could have happened, Shinomiya from the side tells them all that Taku was the one who did this all. He makes a panicked expression and lets everyone know that Taku was the one who glared at that boy and Taku was ready to kill him. After saying this, he began to cry like a little child, and everyone was still defending Taku. But as he entered the class, everyone saw his face after days, and there was a mysterious and evil atmosphere all around him. The students who made fun of him and joked around with him were all stunned to see that he was entirely different from before. He slowly walks to his seat, and as he sat, there was a gloomy aura, and his aura reflected that he was a cold killer who would feast on anyone who messed with him. From that day onward, they all started to distance themselves from him. Although they were worried, they were also fearful of him. He thanks them all and reminds himself that this all is for their own good. After 3 days, Taku was isolated, so much so that the whole class started to badmouth him and began to warn Mika of his behavior and attitude. Taku himself hasn't showed up for school since 3 days. As all the students talked about how he turned into a different person, from the back someone calls out to Mika, and the old man from before greets her and asks if she has seen the cleaning boy of the school. She lets him know that he caught a cold and would take off from the school for a few days, and just as she was saying this, the old man also calls out to Mika's name. She asks how he knows this, and he shows her a small bug which made Taku explain his worst nightmare to the old man. He explains how Taku shared his secret childhood and one core memory of it. In that memory, Mika scared little Taku with bugs, and it did a great toll on him. As she laughs in guilt, they talked back and forth for a minute, and in the next second, he lets Mika know that both of them sure do get along. As she hears these words, she ended up telling him that they used to get along fine, but now there are walls between them. Now, as they say that an old man's advice is worth 100 men, he shares to her that he must be troubled by something very grave, and that is keeping him away. He lets Mika know that Taku cares for her a lot, and whenever he would talk about her, he would smile and giggle while talking about her. As she realizes that perhaps Taku needs her, she smiles, and the old man's words really changed the next step of their relationship. All the happy and uplifting atmosphere vanishes when we get back to reality. Over at Taku's place he had a diary in front of him, and as he wrote in it, he had already lost some weight, and more importantly, there was no liveliness or hope left in him. He started to journal his day-to-day life. On the 10th of October, everything was clear, and he would skip school for a few days. Taku needs to figure something about this sickness before his sister comes back home, and the very next day things turned dark. Instead of clear, he wrote in his diary that today was a cloudy day, and the intense killing intent is back. There was no pattern to this feeling, and it would come for him at a random time, and the sheer intensity of this was too great that he could barely hold on. The next day, he wrote that it was raining, and he also discovered an anomaly. His strength was way beyond human, and he could easily crush everything with just one squeeze of his palms. He has no control over anything that he touched, and this strength was also the main factor which brought down the entire building. He had already ascended the human capability threshold. Although anyone would go straight into testing their new power, the next day Taku did that and tested that he could break, tear, and crush any material as long as he gets a good grip on it. Even metal knives and tools were no problem for him and his strength. As he glances at a cat, his thirst for blood was so much that he was at his limit. That day he knew that his bloodlust would just grow stronger and stronger, and one day he would lash out and murder hundreds, if not thousands, of people, so he decided to stop everything. As he was about to do something heartbreaking, this curse completely broke him from head to toe, and he was ready to do the unthinkable. Just as he was about to thrust, the loud doorbell goes off, and Mika enters his place. He immediately rushes to check, and she was standing right next to him, and his bloodlust began to appear. Now she had no idea of this concept, and she enters his place carefree. She hands him a bag and lets him know that she brought his favorite manju chicken. As she ate it, she notices that all the utensils and plates are shining, and she points out that he surely must have had a lot of free time on his hands. With a grim smile, she asks him if he is really sick or not, and he gulps and shakes her off. She laughs and points out his same old habit, and she laughed so much that tears formed in her eyes. He screams at her, and she challenges him to a game for their old time's sake. She was sure that she would crush him, and that was exactly what happened. Taku lost so many times, and Mika began to laugh again, and deep down he still wanted to know why she came all this way here. She tells him that it is still the same. She tells him that even though it has been 10 years, all his habits are the same. He is a clean freak, his weird eating habits, and abnormal way of lying are all the same. She stretches and lets him know that even if he can't be honest to other people, the people who seriously care for him notice his actions. She tells him that for her, he has not changed a bit. Now as he hears this, he was stunned, and he asks if she is here because of what happened at the school roof, and she began to ask what happened that day. As he began to explain to her about the things and the problem that he has been suffering, she makes a cross with her fingers and lets him know that both of them should just move on from their old talks and accident. As he couldn't make up anything else, with a serious tone he calls out to her name, and in the next second he tells her to get lost. As he said this to her, there was no confusion in his tone, and he was really serious about this. As she began to joke around, he shakes her and reminds her that reality is not that simple. He tells her to shut up, and in the next second, he breaks her heart so bad by telling her to get lost right this instant. His words were so cruel and hurtful that she began to tear up, and she rushes outside. If Mika would have stayed there for another second, Taku was seriously going to skin her alive, and as he panted, he was tearing up and couldn't hold back the thirst for blood anymore. He cries and reminds himself that he must resist and hold on, but he was already broken, isolated, lonely, and hurt. Mika left his place, and tears wouldn't stop, and she asks just what exactly does she needs to do for him. A car pulls over near her, and from inside the car, someone calls out to her name. As she greets the person inside, Mika begins to explain the direction of a place that the driver was going to. After a few minutes, we hear desperate panting sounds, and Taku was making his way to somewhere. He was struggling to meet Mika one more time before everything else. He wanted to apologize for everything that he said and did, and as he began to mutter sorry over and over, from the side, the same car which asked for directions passed by. He notices something, and in the back seat, Mika was kidnapped by that mysterious man. As he sees this, he was sure that it was his childhood friend, and he began to take pictures of the car, but in the next second, a loud hard thump pumps blood to his entire body and fills him with so much adrenaline that he began to run towards that car with everything that he had. He notices that he had no control over his body. He gasped and ran with all his might, and the sole reason for his adrenaline rush was because he imagined a brutal way to satisfy his bloodlust, and this gave him strength. He imagined that he would drag her body while she would bleed, and he would drag her through the streets. As this absolutely gruesome scene was visible to us, as he finally gave in to his bloodlust, he dashed. And in the very next second, Taku ends up getting hit by a car, and the accident ends up breaking everything in him. As the guys from the inside notice this, they reflect on how someone was chasing them but just got crushed. As we see the face of the person who kidnapped Mika, the high school teacher from earlier smirks while driving away with Mika. As the guy in the back complains how they tried doing the trick in the movie to kidnap a person but failed, the high school teacher lets him know that kidnapping in movies is much easier than real life. He instructs that man to inject more sedative chemical into her so she wouldn't wake up for a couple of hours. As he does it, he lightly mutters that the aftermath of Mika would be too bloody to even be seen. On the other hand, Taku was completely knocked out from the blow, but after a few minutes, something strange happened to him. As police question about the car crash, the driver lets the officer know that the guy who got hit got up completely fine and ran off. He explains everything, and after the crash, Taku just gets back up without any injuries, and he himself couldn't believe that he was completely alright. As they question this as well, we get a proper look at the other trash who kidnapped Mika. He began to complain about the teacher's style of killing people, and he began to tell him the proper brutal and sick way he deals with bodies. They both want to do terrible things to her before making her beg for mercy. As we see poor Mika all trapped, they both were arguing to kill her in their own way. The other dude snaps and immediately runs over to her, and he yells and tells the teacher that he can't wait anymore. The teacher calls Yamada, but he instead grabs the teacher's collar. Just as their heated exchange was underway, a phone goes off, and as the teacher checks it, he looks at the number and pauses for a minute. As he mutters Taku's name, he ends up picking up the phone. They both exchange words, and Taku asks his teacher if he has some free time for him. As he was talking to him, from the back Taku opens the shutter, and he mutters out an old poetry from an old literature book. He tells his low-life teacher that this is something that he learned from him, and as he adds about what a great person he thought his teacher to be, with a disappointing look, he cries that sometimes the person you owe so much to ends up becoming the biggest devil of all time. His teacher asks how he was able to find them, and he explains that earlier he was able to get a glimpse of their face and knew what would happen. He asks them in a helpless voice the reason they are doing something like this, and as he got a glance at Mika all defenseless, his killing intent reappears, and he launches himself towards her. As he shouts, his teacher swiftly grabs him, and he calms him down. Yamada asks what is happening, and he begins to explain how he noticed Taku acting all suspicious, and that this would only mean that he is infected with bloodlust. He looks at his teacher and asks what that is, and he shares that bloodlust is a virus which produces uncontrollable bloodlust towards the person you love, and this also accompanies the host with strength, agility, and other blessings. As he asks if these things happen to him as well, his secret was already exposed. He explains how this is an extreme and horrible affliction and how it changes a human into a beast with murderous intent. As he comforts him, he lets him know that he is just like them. As he processes this, the teacher was interrupted by Yamada, who was just begging to kill her. Taku asks if the teacher has bloodlust for Mika as well, and he began his answer with a bold statement, and lets him know that their paths were crossed, and a nice scent from Mika just caught his attention. As this was the turning point for her, he touches her hair and begins to sniff it over and over again. He lets him know that he fell for Mika in a heartbeat. In the next second, that piece of trash ends up sticking his face near her and begins to sniff like a mad dog. As Yamada laughed, Taku screams at that trash to stop. He screams at him to have mercy, and he asks if he forgot that he is a teacher, and with a cold voice, he replies to him that since he is an educator, he needs to lead everyone. As he brings out a knife, he lets him know that now he would teach everyone how to do the worst to someone with pleasure. As he begins to instruct Yamada, helpless Taku just couldn't believe that there was a much harsher and colder sight to this world. He dashes towards them. In the next instant, Yamada ends up stabbing the teacher near his spinal cord. As blood comes from the teacher's mouth, he falls down, and Yamada begins to dance around like a crazy person. As he starts to do a weird ritual, Taku screams at him and calls him the worst, and he punches him hard in the mouth. He begins to lodge his fist into his face, and he started to show his dominance. As the bloodlust disappeared, Taku couldn't fight him like this, and he cries out to him and asks why he would do this. He tries to ask him a few other things, but he just ends up revealing that he is much bigger trash than that teacher who wanted to kill her. He rips every fabric, and as he reveals the sight to him, he asks if he likes it. He tells him that since there is no reaction between his legs, then that means that bloodlust-infected people have lost everything full of pleasure to their bloodlust. As he screams, Yamada was here for pleasure and the fun that came with it. He points his knife at him and tells him that this is his last warning, and he needs to listen to him. He offers to him to join him with his act, and as he sees Mika, there was bloodlust coming from deep within him. He rushes towards her, and he faces the other way. And as tears overflowed, he tells Yamada that despite his weakness, he would still want Mika to live long and healthy. As he mocked him for being inexperienced, he dashes at him, and Taku began the most transformative phase of his life. He has no training or fighting experience, and he was sure that he would lose in a fight like that. He began to use his bloodlust without any notice to find any weak spot, and he ends up seeing his muscle structure clearly. As he glared at him, he remembers a teaching session of a science teacher of theirs, and she explained how normal humans can only process about 80% of external information. As she explained how there is a way to open the eyes of the brain, she explains that such things would create a superhuman far superior than anyone. As he opens his eyes to the maximum extent, he dodges his knife attack, and in the next second, he dives below him and breaks his arm completely. As that trash grunted from pain, Taku didn't stop there, and he knee kicks him so hard that he gets knocked out. As he fell down, he experienced excruciating pain, and as he glances over to see Taku, he also notices that his right arm is broken from several points. Taku warns him to not move an inch, and as he gave him PTSD, he sees the most terrifying form of Taku. As he glared through every inch of his muscles and every twitch, he was glaring through all matter, dead and alive. This was so dangerous that blood flowed from his eyes, and as he tried to grab a knife, the deadly glare that Taku was giving him paranoid him so much that he knew that a demon has transcended into earth. As he made his way closer, he begins to ask for his forgiveness, and since his teeth were all knocked out, he could barely make proper words, and he kept pressuring him. He cries out to him and was making a deal with him to make it out alive, but just as he was begging, from the side a hand grabs him and throws him down. The teacher who was stabbed earlier gets up and begins to beat his face over and over again. He was so insane that while beating he kept saying the same word over and over again. As the blood even fell on Taku's face, he gets up all worn out and glances back at Taku with his bloodied face and asks if he would betray his teacher as well. He guarded Mika and rushed towards him, and as they were about to exchange furious blows with each other, instead of a blood fight we get a bright flashback to when Mika and Taku were little kids. A few kids bully Taku, and Mika brushed them off. As she helps him out, he tells her that he would do his best in the future. With a teary face, young Taku tells Mika that he would make sure to protect her in the future. After seeing this flashback, he ends up waking up, and as he gets up, he sees to his side, instead of Mika, there was an indescribable mutated body there. As poor Taku lets out a hopeless scream, it seemed like he did something to his one and only beloved Mika.